Have you ever thought about what's really happening in your lungs every time you light up a cigarette, whether traditional or e cigarette? The truth is much more disturbing than you might imagine. We are used to believing that smoking is a vice, a personal choice. But what happens if that choice turns out to be a trap, orchestrated by an industry that has been downplaying the risks to our health for decades? Today, we will not only talk about classic cigarettes, the ones we all know, but also about electronic cigarettes, IQOS, and all those devices that, under the guise of safer alternatives, are opening new frontiers of addiction and harm. Get ready to discover the science behind every inhalation and understand why every puff, no matter what device it comes from, is an act of aggression towards your body. For decades, traditional cigarettes have been public enemy number one. Millions of people have lost their lives or seen their quality of life plummet because of smoking. But now, new threats have emerged, often disguised as innovative or less harmful solutions. It is essential to debunk this myth and understand that, although the dynamics may change, the end result for our lungs and our body remains the same: silent but devastating damage. Traditional cigarettes are a lethal cocktail. It's not just the nicotine that's addictive, it's the entire alchemy of thousands of chemicals, many of them toxic and carcinogenic, generated by the combustion of tobacco. When you inhale cigarette smoke, you're not just inhaling vapor, you're introducing tar, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, ammonia, hydrogen cyanide, and benzoapyrene, to name a few, into your lungs. A single cigarette is estimated to contain over 7,000 chemicals, of which at least 250 are known to be harmful and more than 70 are known to cause cancer. Once in the lungs, these substances initiate a destructive process. The delicate and vital lung tissues are mercilessly attacked. Chronic inflammation becomes the norm, not the exception. This constant inflammation is the cause of chronic bronchitis, a condition in which the airways become inflamed and produce excess mucus, making breathing difficult. But it doesn't end there. Progressive damage leads to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, an irreversible disease that drastically reduces lung capacity, making daily activities like walking or talking a strenuous task. And then there's lung cancer. Traditional cigarettes are the leading cause, responsible for about 85–90% of all cases. The risk of developing this deadly disease increases in proportion to the number of cigarettes smoked and the years of smoking. Mutagens in smoke damage the DNA of lung cells, triggering mutations that can lead to uncontrolled cell growth. It's a game of Russian roulette, where every cigarette is a charged shot. In recent years, electronic cigarettes, i.e., or e-cigs, have captured a huge share of the market, especially among young people, driven by marketing that presents them as a healthier or less harmful alternative to traditional cigarettes. The logic behind this narrative is simple: no combustion, therefore no smoke, and therefore fewer toxic substances. But is this really the case? E-cigarettes don't produce smoke, it's true, but they do generate an aerosol. This aerosol is far from harmless. It contains nicotine, the same addictive substance in traditional cigarettes, but also ultrafine particles that can penetrate deep into the lungs. There are heavy metals like nickel, tin, and lead released by the device itself during heating. And let's not forget the flavoring chemicals, often responsible for that sweet, appealing taste, such as diacetyl, which is associated with a serious lung disease called popcorn lung. The effects of this aerosol on the lungs have been the subject of numerous studies, and the results are worrying. Lung irritation and inflammation are common among e-cigarette users. Many report chronic cough and difficulty breathing. But the most alarming data is the emergence of a serious and sometimes fatal condition called EVALI, e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury, a lung injury associated with the use of e-cigarette or vaping products. EVALI manifests with symptoms such as shortness of breath, cough, and chest pain, and in some cases has required intensive care. This is not an isolated phenomenon. It's a wake-up call demonstrating how even the seemingly harmless aerosol from e-cigarettes can cause severe and acute damage to the lungs. Think about it. You are inhaling heavy metals and chemicals designed to create flavors, not to be breathed into the delicate alveoli of your lungs. And then there are heated tobacco devices like IQOS, Glow, and others. Their promise is clear. They heat tobacco to lower temperatures than traditional cigarette combustion, thus reducing the formation of many harmful substances. It's true, they reduce exposure to some of these substances compared to a traditional cigarette, but Kuroisim, reduce and doesn't mean eliminate, much less make safe. Answer: these devices still release toxic chemicals, albeit in smaller quantities, and crucially, they contain nicotine. Addiction is guaranteed. Scientific research is still ongoing to fully evaluate their long-term effects, but early evidence suggests that these products can also cause inflammation and lung damage, albeit with a potentially different risk profile than traditional cigarettes. There is no smoke, but there is an aerosol containing glycerol, propylene glycol, and a number of other substances in addition to nicotine that should not end up in our lungs. Considering them harmless is a dangerous mistake, especially when the industry's ultimate goal is to keep people addicted to nicotine. Smoking, in all its forms, doesn't just damage the lungs, it's an attack on the entire body, an insidious process that erodes the health of every organ and system. Nicotine is the keystone of this addiction, but it is only the beginning of a long list of problems. Nicotine is one of the most highly addictive substances known. Present in all forms of tobacco products, traditional, e-cigarettes, and heated tobacco, it affects the brain by activating reward circuits, releasing dopamine, and creating a feeling of pleasure and relief. This powerful mechanism is what makes quitting smoking so difficult. Nicotine isn't just responsible for addiction, it also has direct effects on the cardiovascular system, increasing heart rate and blood pressure, and can alter brain development in young people, making them more vulnerable to other addictions. It's the gateway to a vicious cycle of use and harm. Smoking is one of the major risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Nicotine, as mentioned, accelerates the heartbeat and constricts blood vessels, forcing the heart to work harder. But it's not just nicotine. Other chemicals in smoke damage the walls of blood vessels, making them stiffer and narrower. This process facilitates the accumulation of atherosclerotic plaques, which can clog arteries and lead to dramatic events such as myocardial infarction and stroke. Every puff increases the risk of blood clots, which can block blood flow to the heart or brain, often with fatal consequences. Smokers are estimated to have a 2 to 4 times greater risk of developing heart disease than non smokers. The link between smoking and cancer is inextricable. It's not just lung cancer. Smoking is an established cause of cancers of the mouth, throat, esophagus, larynx, bladder, pancreas, kidney, colon, liver, and cervix, as well as acute myeloid leukemia. Carcinogens in smoke travel through the bloodstream, damaging the DNA of cells throughout the body and triggering tumor growth in various organs. But the damage doesn't end with cancer and the cardiovascular system. Smoking negatively impacts almost every aspect of health. Fertility reduces fertility in both men and women, increasing the risk of pregnancy complications. Bone health contributes to loss of bone density, increasing the risk of osteoporosis and fractures. Oral health causes gum disease, tooth loss, and bad breath, as well as increasing the risk of oral cancer. Immune function weakens the immune system, making the body more vulnerable to infections and diseases. Skin accelerates skin aging, causing wrinkles and a dull complexion. The picture that emerges is clear. All forms of tobacco products, from traditional cigarettes to e-cigs and IQOs, are a systematic and sustained attack on our health. Promises of less harm are a double-edged sword which can mislead and trap new users in a cycle of addiction with consequences that are not yet fully understood. True safety lies not in switching from one product to another, but in completely abandoning the use of nicotine and all inhaled substances. The only way to truly protect your lungs and your body is to quit. It's a difficult choice, but it's the most important choice you can make for yourself and your future.